nonprofits and the people behind them. KC Cares is the intersection of the nonprofit and profit communities, making Kansas City a better place to live, work, and play. This KC Cares segment is brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, www.kaufman.org. I'm Ruth Baum-Biggis. With the insight of philanthropic leaders in our community, the Black Community Fund was established as a fund of the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation by the Hall Family Foundation. Its purpose was to invest in the African American community of Kansas City to meet critical needs. Now, 40 years later, the Black Community Fund lifts others, providing more than $4.5 million to over 200 nonprofit organizations during that time, organizations focused on education, human services, arts, culture, humanities, and faith organizations. NaTika Rowles is Executive Director of the Black Community Fund, and we welcome her as we dig into the work of this organization that's making change in our community. NaTika, it's so great to have you.
Thank you, Ruth. Thanks for having me.
Well, in full disclosure to our audience, we last had someone from the Black Community Fund pre-pandemic, and I would bet by a year or two, maybe before then. So it's been some time, and we've been watching around through social media and everything. You all are active, vibrant, doing all kinds of things. Bring us up to speed, though. Give us an overview of the fund and your focus.
Yeah, I've been with the fund. You said the last time you spoke to someone was pre-pandemic. So I think I came along during the pandemic in 2020. And up until then, our fund was focused on grant making, scholarships to Black students, convening around critical issues that concern the Black community. We also did a little bit of convening around the arts and cultural events as well. And I've added a little thing that we do, which is mobilizing Black philanthropy in communities of color. So that's pretty much what our focus has been. We've honed in on targeting grassroots, Black-led, Black-serving nonprofits and supporting them. And the need for that has always been around, and we've always done that. But during 2020 and all of the racial unrest and social injustices that were going on and living through a pandemic, our board decided that the disparities were just so blatant in the Black community and what the needs were that we just dove into that and started supporting smaller grassroots nonprofits.
Well, that's an interesting pivot. And very insightful of a board. So much to dive into here. I want to go back to what the board did, but I want to let the audience know, and you came on board in the pandemic.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit what that was like and how you weathered that, oh my gosh, huge storm?
Yeah. So transition is hard. So not only were we transitioning with a new executive director, we were transitioning the needs of the Black community as well. So it was difficult, but it was a thing that needed to happen. So for me, I just kind of took it as a way to renew, reimagine, just kind of rethink what BCF is and what it was and how to stay relevant and those things. So we were literally just trying things. We wanted to do philanthropy different. We knew that they had been talking about this, as I said. I came on in 2020. They've been doing this work. They've been supporting, Black-led, Black-serving nonprofits. So we started to rethink what we could do, how we can take the burden off of the nonprofit. How can we show up in a more trust-based philanthropy space? That term was thrown around a lot. How can we focus more on equity? How can we not just allow people to jump through hoops for money? because we really just wanted to help in a way that saw during 2020 it wasn't happening. The nonprofits that we were serving didn't have access. They didn't have the banking relationships. They didn't have the social networking to access funds. So in 2020, and yeah, it was difficult because the world was on fire, right? So
Yeah.
we were working from home. I was introduced to the board. We had to build relationships, and we still had a job to do. So even the scholarships that we were giving out that year, that was difficult because students, they weren't on campus. The things that they had planned to do were shifting. So we had to be, pretty flexible in all of our giving in that way. But I think the thing that just kind of turned everything around for us was that the board knew all of this stuff was going on in the world, right? And so statements were going out. Everybody was doing an equity statement on diversity, on justice. So we put a statement out, but the board was adamant about what are we going to do beyond the statement. We need to put some money to this statement. So we literally just wrote checks to nonprofits that were serving the Black community in voting registration, housing, and food insecurity as well. And we granted out $100,000 that summer. No grant competition, no cycle, no application. Literally, here's a check for the work that you've been doing and the work that we need you to continue to do during this pandemic, during this time, of racial and social unrest in our country.
So the board really drove this change with you at the leadership helm and living on Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever we all lived on and lived through. Now that we've kind of come out of it, come out of the pandemic, let's say that. I don't know that the rest of the world has changed tremendously, but how are you now moving forward with that kind of sea change that started during the pandemic?
Yeah, so we had to shift a little bit. For a couple of years, we had to do our events online. That was new and different. Nothing that no anybody else had to do. Everybody was doing this, but our focus is still there. We are committed to serving nonprofits that are serving the Black community in a way that in a way that's, I would say, more innovative. We're open to how we're making grants now. It's not just an application. Last year, we held a workshop where we paid nonprofits to come to the workshop. We did a pitch competition. So what it did was, and me being new because I don't know any better, I'm like, yeah, we can do that. Let's do it. Let's try it. Okay, you did that okay, let's do something different. And they were willing to allow me to be flexible with ideas as well. So we literally just created this think tank, and we said, what don't we like about philanthropy right now? Let's just not do that. So what does that look like? Oh, let's try this. At the end of the day, we helped fund a lot of smaller nonprofits that would not have gotten funding if we hadn't stepped in. At the end of the day, those nonprofits went on to bigger, larger relationships with foundations and secured larger dollars over multiple years. And that's what we wanted to do, right? So we're continuing in that. We have some amazing things coming up in order to continue that work in the Black community.
You've created a bridge.
Okay.
That's what it sounds like. So part of KC Care's focus too, we love all nonprofits, but it's an extra warm feeling when we can bring a smaller nonprofit that maybe doesn't have that footprint. And it sounds like you all kind of focused on some of those folks that sometimes are that small voice that doesn't get heard, or there's so much other talking in the world that they miss out. So congratulations to you all. All right. You mentioned all these new insightful things. Share with our audience a little bit about your areas of focus and the kind of new things that you are doing.
Yeah, so I'll talk about the grant making since that's, kind of what people now they know us for. Before it was scholarships, and we deliberately wanted to shift that. We're like, we do a lot of things, and sounding the alarm on those things. So with our grant making, I think last year we probably granted out over $200,000 to grassroots nonprofits, Black led, Black serving, right? The cool thing about that was we revamped our application. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. And as I said earlier, we don't want people to have to jump through hoops to obtain our dollars, right? We looked at that. We also looked at different ways that we can engage grantees, especially those that don't have the social networks, that don't know, may not have funds to invest in professional development or resource development. So, as I mentioned before, we created what we called a vision workshop. We invited 40 nonprofits to come to this workshop to receive training on storytelling, marketing, social media, outcome measurements, right? And it was got them in a room. The feedback that we received was that you see us, Black Community Fund. We're not alone. We're out here doing this work and you haven't forgotten about us. Because we understand that most of these nonprofits are not paying themselves. They don't have the budgets to invest in salaries. Most of them are volunteer. We decided that we were going to give them money to come. So every nonprofit that came received a $500 check at the end. And then we were like, well, how can we give them some more money? It'd be great. So at the end of that workshop, they were invited to enter a pitch competition.
Cool.
And it was just like you and I are talking, Ruth. They just talked to two people about their nonprofit. And then we decided right then and there who was going to get some money. There wasn't an application process. So the next day, that evening, we invited these nonprofits to our Vision Gala. It was a gala to just celebrate Black philanthropy. It was held during Black Philanthropy Month, which is a national recognized time during August, every August. So we invited them to come to this gala. And at the gala, we made the announcements of the winners of the pitch competition. And we granted 8 nonprofits $64,000. And so that was pretty exciting. I love to give away money. One of the nonprofits said, I don't know anybody who's as excited as NaTika about giving money away. So that's what we're doing with grant making. If I can talk a little bit about the scholarships this year,
yes.
Our 40th year, our anniversary year, we did grant 40 scholarships to Black students to continue their education. And this is like adult learners, graduate schools, high school, community college, what have you. So 40 of those kiddos or young Black students, I call them kiddos, and in a sum of $176,000. Now, that may not seem like a lot of money. And we are a small fund. We're relatively small, a small funder. But that scholarship, most of those scholarships were in the sum of $5,000. So that's a game changer for most of these students.
Right.
Yeah. So, and we were pretty adamant about, that amount. Now we do have some scholarships that were around $1,000 for students. But overall, it was $176,000 in education for Black students. So I'd say we're trying to chip at that financial burden gap there. And then convening around critical issues. So we are in conversations with some community leaders about what we want to talk about, what we want to bring people around, issues facing the Black community. We're doing that in a very sensitive way because we're not doing this work. We're not programming. So we're talking to these organizations that are boots on the ground. They are in proximity with what's going on in the Black community and to see what do we need to talk about, right?
Right.
What do we need to lift up? What do we need to give a voice to? Much like Casey Cares, what platform do we need to create for you? So we did create a podcast last year and kind of been talking about it throughout the pandemic because why not? Everybody's online, right? That was one of my great ideas. So the podcast dropped this year during our 40th year, and we just talked to leaders of nonprofits and some volunteers about volunteerism in the Black community, affordable housing in the Black community development, things like that. So I urge everyone to listen to that. Yeah. So and then now we're inching up on our big event that's coming up in the next month. Oh my God, it's here. And
the panic.
Yes, and we will be celebrating 40 years of giving. It's our legacy gala. And here's the thing, Ruth. We've been doing this for 40 years, right? And kind of been under the radar. So this gala is to tell people this is what we've been doing and this is what we're going to continue to do for the next 40 years. And we're celebrating that. And then we want to invite people along to be to mobilize their giving, to mobilize their philanthropy, right? And we want everybody to look at themselves as a philanthropist, especially Black folks, because this is what we do, right? So I'm excited. Lots going on.
Where is the best place for folks to go to find out everything that you're doing, find out about your event, look at your grant making opportunities, et cetera?
Yeah, so we do have a website, and that's blackcommunityfund.org. So you can definitely visit our website. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Our offices are out of the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation on Broadway. You can pop in, give me a call. Yeah, so there's tons of ways to get in touch with us, but I would say our website is probably the easiest, and the social media.
Again, for full transparency, disclosure, folks that are not Black or African American, could they apply for grants if they're serving the Black community? Or are you really focused on, Black leadership, Black, et cetera? I think you answered.
Yeah, they can definitely apply. And we prioritize Black-led, Black serving. Sure. So what that means is that we look at them more. We focus on that, right? But if there is a program that just happens to have a white leader that's serving the Black community and serving them well, then they could definitely be funded. And if you look at some of our past grants, you would see that, that we have. So the focus is on serving the Black community. What we found during 2020 and leading up to that was that a lot of Black leaders, a lot of Black professionals did not have access. And not only did they not have access, so there's something real about when Black people are being murdered in the street around you, right? It's hard to come to work that day.
Absolutely.
It's hard to do the work that you love to do. It becomes heavy. It becomes a weight sometimes. So our focus on Black leaders is to care for them, right? Is to let them know that we see you, that we're here to support you, not only the work that you're doing, but you as a person, that they are valuable, right? It's not just the work, it's not just the program. We know that the Black community was hit hard during that time, and still really trying to process some of these things. I mean, the ebbs and flows of the social unrest, the racial unrest in our community affects Black bodies. It just does.
Right.
So when we create a space for them to talk about capacity building, we're also building camaraderie. I mean, most of those nonprofits are still in touch with each other. They meet, I don't even know they're meeting. And they're like, they've built mentorship. They've built a group of people that they can process with, that's in the trenches with them. So I think that's great. That's the focus on the Black leaders.
Where today does the preponderance of your funds come from?
Great.
You're handing out money, so somewhere money's got to be coming in, right?
Somewhere. That's a great question. I would say for a while we've had a pretty substantial grant through the Kellogg Foundation that allowed us to do some pretty innovative work. That grant has now sunset. So last year, I will say that we received our largest gift from the Sunderland Foundation, a $500,000 gift. And so, but that's the largest in 40 years. So yeah, there's some private donations. We events and fundraising is not part of our resource development plan. And I don't know that is a way that we will effectively raise funds. We have a philosophy of investing in the Black community. And when we decided to do that in a radical way, like we did, people started giving. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, most people say you got to spend money to make money. I mean, that's in entrepreneurship and business, but we have a mindset of whether we are supported or not, this is what the need is. So this is what we're going to do, right? And having that mindset, that confidence that we are investing in the Black community, people are on board with that. People want to be a part of that. It's almost a sense of empowerment to be able to do that. So we have granted a lot of money in the past 3 years.
Right.
A lot, almost as much as we've done in the past 10 years. But we've also raised a lot of money in the past 3 years, more so than we've done in the past 10 years of this fund. And that was by talking to folks like you, this platform that you have, inviting people to join us in philanthropy in a way that it's relational, not transactional. And people are giving. And have donors that are Black leaders that are supporting us now. And that says a lot to me. So yeah, not a influx of funds. We're still a funder that would welcome any donations, right? So I have to say that.
Oh, absolutely. Of course. And go to your website. Oh,
go to my website.
Absolutely.
Click the donate button.
You have such enthusiasm for this work. Give us a peek of where NaTika came from and landed here.
Really?
Yeah, well,
okay.
Of course, because you're leading the charge. So I want, the man and woman behind the curtain. We want to see.
Yeah, so I have a background in nonprofit on the ED side of running a nonprofit. So I was there with the nonprofits that we're serving, and I think that's where my passion comes in. I've been, leading a grassroots nonprofit, writing grants, up at night, and so that's my background. I have a husband, I have 5 children. And I think we've been in Kansas City for about 7 or 8 years. My husband is from Kansas City. He's been trying to get me here for the past 25 years of our marriage. And it finally happened, and it's the best place ever. So, yeah, I just have a heart for community. I have a heart for community development in a way that citizens should be empowered, right? Um, to change, to be the change makers in their community. So I try to interject that in any and everything I do, and with the Black Community Fund. And I really can't I really can't sit here and say, oh yeah, we've done all this work. But my board of directors, our board chair, I'm going to name drop. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, so our board chair, Emmett Pearson Jr., who's been on the board for years, is quite instrumental in the direction that BCF has taken. Damon Bryant, who's also been on the board as long, if not as long as Emmett, he's getting there. Huge influence on the direction of the fund. Darren Story, Shannon Berry, and Dan Haley. That's it. It's the mighty 5, right? And with them, I'd say they allow me to kind of float around the city and see what we can put our hands into and fund, right? May not be a lot. I mean, we don't have millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars, but
don't tell anyone that. You will. You will.
Oh, we will. And we'll look back on this podcast and go, yep, we spoke that. Thank you.
You heard it here first on Casey Cares. Well, it's your 40th anniversary, which is monumental if you think about it and what's happened in that 40 years. Oh my gosh, so much change. Probably you weren't even born yet. But you're leading and I can't believe you have 5 kids and you're doing this. Oh my gosh. Kudos to you, Mama.
Thank you.
Working, Mama. We are so grateful for your time. I want to remind everybody to go check out the Black Community Fund, doing great work. So it's blackcommunityfund.org. And I'm sure NaTika would answer any question that you have. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Ruth. It was fun.
Thank you for joining us for Casey Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by Charitable Communications, also a nonprofit. This Casey Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, www.kauffman.org. If you'd like to be a guest on Casey Cares, please visit our website, kccaresonline.org, and spread the love. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Casey Cares Radio and on Instagram at Casey Cares Online. Don't forget, you can catch us on Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. on ESPN, 1510 a.m. and 94.5 FM. Thank you for joining us on Casey Cares.